You were never just bone and blood. You were a vibration wrapped in memory, a spark carried from the first breath the universe ever took. But somewhere along the way, the voice of that spark grew faint. It wasn't stolen in a single moment. It was dimmed over years, buried under the noise of clocks, cities, and the endless hum of other people's thoughts. And yet, it's still there. A thread of sound beneath your heartbeat. A whisper that does not speak in words, but in waves. There are moments you've felt it, though you didn't have a name for it. The shiver when a piece of music touches something deeper than your ears. The hollow ache when you stare at the horizon too long and feel both homesick and found at the same time. The way your skin tightens when someone you love says your name softly, as if they've known you in 100 other lives. This isn't imagination, this is memory. Not the memory of events, but the memory of your own essence, the original sound your soul was born with. Ancient peoples spoke of it in different ways. The Egyptians called it the breath of the Ka, the life double. Taoist mystics described a secret wind that could be awakened to carry the mind beyond the body. Hermetic scholars hinted at the bridge between the temple and the star, a path that connected the heart to the heavens. All of them spoke of a channel, a hidden corridor, running through the body like a silver river, a passageway that carries the truth of who you are from the deep well of the body to the open sky of the spirit. Most will never find it, not because it is far, but because it is quiet. But there is a place, a point on the body, where this current can be touched, not pressed, not forced, simply awakened. When you touch it, it stirs the forgotten voice. Not a sound your ears can hear, but a resonance that shapes your thoughts, your feelings, your very presence in the world. Tonight, you will not learn a trick. You will remember a truth, because the voice you lost has been waiting, patient as stone, for you to come back to it. And if something in you, something older than your name, is leaning in right now, if your breath has grown slower, if your chest feels both heavy and light, then you've already begun. If your soul has started to stir, if something ancient inside you is waking up, follow this thread before it fades again. Subscribe, not because you're curious. Subscribe because deep down you remember. This is the spine gospel. They told you the pineal gland was just a pea-sized organ in your brain, a relic of evolution, a leftover with no real use. But the ancients did not see it as useless. They called it the seat of the soul, the eye of God, the gate of dreams. They carved it into temple walls, guarded it in priestly scrolls, and spoke of it only in whispers to those deemed ready. Why such secrecy? Because they believed this single hidden structure was not just part of your body. It was the bridge between two worlds, the physical and the spiritual, the seen and the unseen. In the temples of Egypt, the Eye of Horus was not just a symbol of protection, it was a precise anatomical map of the human brain. Priests knew that behind the brow, between your eyes, lay a place where perception bends, where time loosens, where visions enter. They drew the spiral of the serpent, coiling up the spine, to show how energy rises to this point, igniting light where darkness once lived. The pineal gland, they taught, could be awakened, and when it awakened, reality itself changed. Ancient Indian sages spoke of it as the Ajna chakra, the third eye, a lotus of light between the brows, not a poetic metaphor, but a living portal. Meditation, breath, sacred sound, these were the tools to polish it like a mirror so it could reflect the infinite. In the cryptic language of the Gnostics, it was the lamp of the body. If the lamp was lit, they said, the whole being would be full of light. If it was dim, the soul would stumble in shadow. A teaching so simple, and yet so dangerous to those who ruled through fear. That is why, over centuries, this knowledge was buried, not destroyed, for truth cannot be destroyed, but wrapped in layers of symbolism, ritual, and distraction. You were told to look outside for salvation, while the key was hidden inside your own head. Modern science will tell you that the pineal gland produces melatonin, regulating your sleep and circadian rhythms. That is true, but it is only the smallest part of the truth. There is another secretion, one that still stirs debate and disbelief: dimethyltryptamine, or DMT, the spirit molecule, a chemical that appears naturally within the human body, capable of unlocking dreamlike visions, near-death experiences, and altered states of consciousness. Imagine the very same molecule that mystics sought through years of fasting and prayer exists within you, waiting. This is the part they did not want you to know, not because it was false, but because it was too powerful. A human being who realizes they carry the universe within becomes very hard to control. The high priests of Babylon, the magi of Persia, the philosophers of Greece, all shared the same thread of understanding: that the inner eye could be opened, and once it was, you would no longer be bound by the illusions of the world. Some traditions taught that the awakening happened only after death, the soul passing through the tunnel of light as the pineal bursts with one final flood of vision. But the deepest teachings said otherwise. They said you could cross while still alive, that heaven was not a place you went to, but a state you entered. The question was never if the pineal gland was sacred. The question was, how much of its power have we forgotten? Look at the statues of Sumer, kings holding pine cones in their hands. Why a pine cone? Because its spiraling pattern mirrors the gland's own geometry, the Fibonacci code, the golden ratio, the signature of creation itself. The Vatican carries this symbol too, though few recognize it. A massive bronze pine cone stands in the court of the pine, an echo of truths once known and now disguised. When you touch the space between your eyes, gently, intentionally, you are not simply pressing skin. You are pressing against centuries of forgotten wisdom. You are calling to the quiet organ that has been waiting for you to remember. And if you hold that awareness long enough, the body changes, the mind grows still, the edges of the room soften as though the world itself is breathing. This is not magic in the sense of fantasy. It is the original magic, the science of the soul, practiced long before the word science existed. The priests hid it. The prophets spoke of it in riddles, and yet it lives on, because you carry it. And so, the truth they feared is the truth you now hear. You were never cut off from the divine. The gate was never locked, it was only veiled, waiting for the moment you chose to see. For most of our lives, we move through the world as if reality were a fixed stage, unchanging, absolute, and obvious. We believe what our senses tell us, that the sky is blue, the ground is solid, and our bodies are nothing more than flesh and bone. But this is the first and most elaborate illusion. The moment we accept the surface as the whole truth, we become blind to the layers that lie beneath. This blindness is not accidental, it is cultivated. From birth, we are handed a map, not of the territory, but of a version of the territory someone else has drawn. It tells us where we can go, what we can believe, and how we must see ourselves. Schools, traditions, and even the soft lullabies of our culture reinforce the same story, that you are small, temporary, and bound by the physical laws you see around you. But if you pause long enough, you can feel the cracks in this story. A sudden déjà vu, a dream that bleeds into waking life, a moment when time slows and the edges of things dissolve. These are not coincidences. They are the places where the curtain slips, where the greater stage is revealed. The ancients knew this. Every culture, from the temples of Kemet to the monasteries of Tibet, held two layers of knowledge. The outer layer, for the public, was ritual, tradition, and myth. But the inner layer, guarded, whispered, sometimes hidden in symbols carved into stone, was the map to dissolve the illusion. And here lies the strange truth. The illusion is not inherently evil. It is a necessary veil. Without it, the human mind, unprepared, would dissolve into chaos. Imagine trying to perceive every wavelength of light at once, or hearing every sound in the universe simultaneously. The physical world, as we see it, is like a filter, designed to keep us from being overwhelmed. The danger comes when the filter becomes a prison. When the veil is mistaken for the totality of reality, we forget we ever had access to more. We forget that our ancestors spoke to the unseen as easily as to the seen, that they mapped the stars not just as pinpoints of light, but as living entities connected to our own essence. Breaking the illusion is not about rejecting the physical world. It is about remembering that it is a fraction of what exists, and the first fracture appears when we question the certainty of our senses. Your eyes show you a narrow band of visible light. Your ears register only a thin slice of sound. Your mind interprets these fragments and declares, "This is reality." But what if what you call real is just the tip of a vast and ancient structure, like the visible peak of a submerged mountain? The priests and mystics of old worked tirelessly to keep the higher knowledge of art live. They understood that the mind, when trained, can pierce the illusion without shattering it. Through breath, sound, stillness, and certain sacred points on the body, they could shift perception, revealing the hidden lattice that underlies all matter. One of these points, curiously, sits between your eyes, the so-called third eye. It is not a poetic metaphor. Anatomically, it aligns with the pineal gland, a mysterious organ that regulates light perception and circadian rhythms. Esoteric traditions claim it is the seat of the soul's vision, the portal through which the unseen is seen. When the third eye is dormant, you see a world of separation. When it awakens, you begin to perceive the threads that connect everything, not as an idea but as a direct experience. The trees breathe with you, the stars hum with your heartbeat. The boundaries between your body and the air dissolve into shimmering exchange. The system we live in would prefer you did not discover this. An awakened being is difficult to control because they no longer believe the fear-based narratives that keep the collective asleep. They know that death is not the end, that time is not a straight line, that energy moves between forms endlessly, like water shifting between cloud, rain, and ocean. Breaking the illusion does not require renouncing life or retreating to a cave. It requires shifting your center of awareness. Small practices, a daily moment of stillness, deep and intentional breathing, focused attention on the space between thoughts, act like keys. They do not create the hidden world, they simply allow you to notice it. And once you notice it, the old certainties begin to dissolve. You start to see how much of what you were taught was designed to keep your vision narrow. The illusion does not fight you directly. It distracts you, occupies you, keeps your attention scattered across endless noise. But when you learn to gather your attention like a beam of light, the illusion thins. The moment you glimpse the deeper reality, even for a breath, something inside you changes forever. You cannot unsee it. You may still live in the physical world, pay bills, and greet your neighbors. But a part of you walks in a different landscape, one where every step hums with the knowledge that you are more than this body, more than this brief life. And so, the journey continues. From the first cracks in the facade to the full recognition of the vast reality it conceals. The next step is not merely to see through the illusion, but to learn the science behind it. The laws and patterns the ancients studied, which allowed them to move between realms without losing themselves. Science, in its purest essence, is not the enemy of spirit. It is its reflection in the language of measurement and observation. For thousands of years, mystics and seers described truths about the human body and mind that modern laboratories are only beginning to confirm. In the silent meeting point between neurons and breath, between heartbeat and intention, a map emerges, a bridge between the mystical and the measurable. The pineal gland, for example, was spoken of in ancient Egypt as the eye of Horus, and in Vedic traditions as the Ajna chakra, the third eye. Today, neuroscientists recognize it as a tiny endocrine gland that regulates circadian rhythms, producing melatonin and, according to some studies, possibly trace amounts of DMT, the so-called spirit molecule. Its shape mirrors sacred geometrical patterns found in ancient temples, as if nature itself sculpted it to be a vessel for higher perception. But the pineal gland is not an isolated oracle. It is part of a living network. The heart, long romanticized as the seat of love and compassion, carries its own neural circuitry, an independent heart-brain of 40,000 neurons that communicates directly with the brain through electrical signal, ES and hormones. This is not poetry, it is measurable. The HeartMath Institute's research shows that the heart's electromagnetic field is the most powerful in the human body, extending several feet beyond the skin. Ancient mystics described this energy as an aura, a radiant field of consciousness. Science now calls it coherence. When the heart's rhythm aligns with the brain's waves in harmonious coherence, a state of deep clarity and inner calm emerges. Tibetan monks call it samadhi. Sufi mystics call it fana, the dissolving of the self into divine presence. In this state, intuition sharpens, perception widens, and the veil between the physical and spiritual thins. Breath is the thread that weaves these systems together. Pranayama in yoga, Qigong breathing in Taoist practice, or the breath prayers of Christian mystics, all are ancient technologies for altering the body's chemistry and brain's frequency. Modern studies on breathwork reveal that slow, rhythmic breathing activates the vagus nerve, lowering heart rate, reducing stress hormones, and shifting brain waves toward alpha and theta states, the same frequencies observed in deep meditation and moments of creative insight. The vagus nerve, often overlooked in medical studies, is in truth a golden cord connecting body and spirit. Stretching from the brainstem through the heart, lungs, and gut, it is the body's great communicator. In sacred traditions, the gut has been called the second brain, a place where instinct and divine whisper meet. Activating the vagus nerve through sound, chant, or breath not only calms the body but opens a channel for what the ancients called gnosis, direct knowing. The moment you glimpse the deeper reality, even for a breath, something inside you changes forever. You cannot unsee it. You may still live in the physical world, pay bills, and greet your neighbors. But a part of you walks in a different landscape, one where every step hums with the knowledge that you are more than this body, more than this brief life. And so, the journey continues. From the first cracks in the facade to the full recognition of the vast reality it conceals. The next step is not merely to see through the illusion, but to learn the science behind it, the laws and patterns the ancients studied, which allowed them to move between realms without losing themselves. Science, in its purest essence, is not the enemy of spirit. It is its reflection in the language of measurement and observation. For thousands of years, mystics and seers described truths about the human body and mind that modern laboratories are only beginning to confirm. In the silent meeting point between neurons and breath, between heartbeat and intention, a map emerges, a bridge between the mystical and the measurable. The pineal gland, for example, was spoken of in ancient Egypt as the eye of Horus, and in Vedic traditions as the Ajna chakra, the third eye. Today, neuroscientists recognize it as a tiny endocrine gland that regulates circadian rhythms, producing melatonin and, according to some studies, possibly trace amounts of DMT, the so-called spirit molecule. Its shape mirrors sacred geometrical patterns found in ancient temples, as if nature itself sculpted it to be a vessel for higher perception. But the pineal gland is not an isolated oracle. It is part of a living network. The heart, long romanticized as the seat of love and compassion, carries its own neural circuitry, an independent heart brain of 40,000 neurons that communicates directly with the brain through electrical signal, ES and hormones. This is not poetry, it is measurable. The HeartMath Institute's research shows that the heart's electromagnetic field is the most powerful in the human body, extending several feet beyond the skin. Ancient mystics described this energy as an aura, a radiant field of consciousness. Science now calls it coherence. When the heart's rhythm aligns with the brain's waves in harmonious coherence, a state of deep clarity and inner calm emerges. Tibetan monks call it samadhi. Sufi mystics call it fana, the dissolving of the self into divine presence. In this state, intuition sharpens, perception widens, and the veil between the physical and spiritual thins. Breath is the thread that weaves these systems together. Pranayama in yoga, Qigong breathing in Taoist practice, or the breath prayers of Christian mystics, all are ancient technologies for altering the body's chemistry and brain's frequency. Modern studies on breathwork reveal that slow, rhythmic breathing activates the vagus nerve, lowering heart rate, reducing stress hormones, and shifting brain waves toward alpha and theta states, the same frequencies observed in deep meditation and moments of creative insight. The vagus nerve, often overlooked in medical studies, is in truth a golden cord connecting body and spirit. Stretching from the brainstem through the heart, lungs, and gut, it is the body's great communicator. In sacred traditions, the gut has been called the second brain, a place where instinct and divine whisper meet. Activating the vagus nerve through sound, chant, or breath not only calms the body but opens a channel for what the ancients called gnosis, direct knowing. Consider the golden ratio. To the Greeks it was beauty. To the Egyptians it was divinity in numbers. The same spiral that governs the path of galaxies curls in the shape of a seashell, and even in the unfurling of your DNA. This was no coincidence to the ancients, it was the signature of the source, a reminder that everything, from the smallest cell to the widest expanse of sky, follows the same eternal geometry. The priests guarded these truths fiercely, not because they wanted to keep people ignorant, but because they believed unprepared minds could misuse them. The blueprint was more than a set of measurements, it was a manual for creation itself, and creation, they knew, was a double-edged power. Walk into the Great Pyramid of Giza, and you will not find paintings of gods in battle or kings on thrones. Instead, you find precision, angles cut to fractions of a degree, chambers placed with mathematical intent. It's as if the builders were less concerned with storytelling and more concerned with building a machine. Many modern engineers who have studied the structure agree the pyramid's design is far too precise to be an accident of primitive tools. But here is the deeper truth the ancient architects hinted at. The pyramid is not just a monument, it is a map. Its dimensions, when decoded, mirror the exact proportions of the Earth, the distances between planets, and even the mathematical constants that modern science reveres. The blueprint carved into its design is not Egyptian, it is cosmic. The same can be said of the temples of Angkor Wat, whose layout mirrors the movement of the stars, or the stone circles of Nabta Playa, which predate Stonehenge and align perfectly with the rising of Sirius. The star ancient priests called the Watcher. In every culture, across oceans and centuries, we find the same strange obsession, building structures that echo the heaven as. Why? Because the ancients believed that if you built in harmony with the cosmos, you would draw the cosmos into the structure. Temples weren't just places to pray. They were resonance chambers. They could amplify intention, magnify energy, and connect human consciousness to the great network of creation. Now here is the part that makes scholars uneasy. The same blueprint found in the stars and in stone is found in you. Your heartbeat, your breathing cycles, even the electromagnetic fields surrounding your body, they follow the same patterns. It is as if the universe left a copy of itself inside every human being, a miniature cosmos, hidden in plain sight. In ancient mystery schools, initiates were taught that the purpose of life was not to find God, but to remember Him, by reactivating this blueprint within themselves. Meditation, sacred movement, fasting and chanting were not random rituals. They were codes, each designed to awaken the dormant architecture of the soul. But there's something else the priests knew, something that connects directly to the secrets we've been uncovering. They understood that this blueprint was vulnerable. If you altered the geometry of a body, disrupted its rhythms, or interfered with its energetic fields, you could weaken its connection to the cosmic source. In other words, you could rewrite the temple. And so they built their monuments not just to celebrate the divine, but to anchor the original blueprint into the earth, a safeguard against forces that might try to erase it. Each stone, each alignment, was a vow. This is who we are. This is where we came from. This is how we return. Think of it this way. Every cathedral, pyramid, or megalithic site is a kind of tuning fork. When you stand inside it, you are bathed in its frequency, whether you are aware of it or not. Some part of you, ancient, silent, and infinite, remember, and perhaps that is why these structures still draw us after thousands of years. We do not simply admire their beauty, we are responding to a call we cannot name, the whisper of the blueprint, urging us to look up at the stars, and then inward to the universe curled quietly inside our chest. It is not lost, it is not broken, it waits. They say the source is not something you find, it is something you remember. It has been with you since your first breath, buried under years of noise, fear, and the dust of forgetfulness. But when the dust settles, when the noise fades, a quiet pulse begins to echo within you, the same pulse that beat in the hearts of the ancient mystics. This is the golden thread that binds all life, the same current that whispered to the prophets in visions, that guided healers to place their hands on the sick, that gave poets the words to awaken sleeping souls. Reconnecting to the source is not about becoming something new, it is about peeling away everything you are not. The priests of Kemet, the rishis of India, the seers of the Andes, all taught that divinity was not up there but in here. The temple was not just stone and gold, it was the body itself. The altar was the human heart, and the offering was your undivided attention. The first step is remembering that you are not separate from creation. Look at your breath. It is not yours alone. It enters you, then leaves to join the wind, to move across oceans, to enter the lungs of another being miles away. You are already connected to every living thing through this simple act. The ancients knew this. They aligned their breathing with the rhythms of the earth, the cycles of the moon, the tides of the sea. The second step is silence. Not the silence of an empty room, but the silence inside the storm. The source speaks in whispers, never in shouts. It is not hidden, it is simply drowned out by the endless chatter of the mind. The monks in the mountains, the desert hermits, the wandering sages, all sought this inner stillness, not because they were escaping life, but because they were returning to it. And then there is alignment, tuning your inner compass to the same frequency as the source. This is where intention becomes prayer, and prayer becomes action. The ancients built rituals for this, not as superstitions, but as technology for the soul. Lighting a lamp at sunrise, pouring water onto the earth, tracing sacred symbols in the air, these were all ways to remind the body and mind of their place in the great pattern. Modern life has severed many of these threads. We rush, we consume, we numb ourselves. And in doing so, we forget that the source is not something you chase, but something you open to. And when you open, the river flows through you effortlessly. Your thoughts soften, your heart feels lighter, your body carries a different kind of strength, not the strength to dominate, but the strength to hold, to endure, to give. The source is not a God with a name. It is the unnamed essence from which all names arise. Some have called it God, others the Tao, others the Great Spirit, the Divine Mother, the All. But these are just garments. Strip away the garments, and what remains is pure light, pure awareness. To reconnect is to live as if everything is sacred, because it is. The water you drink carries the memory of ancient rain. The food you eat was once kissed by sunlight older than the pyramids. The eyes you look into are reflections of your own. And here is the truth. The source never left you. You left it, or rather you turned your face away. All that is required is to turn back, to listen again, to feel the pulse that has been with you since before you were born. When you do, life no longer feels like something happening to you, but as something happening through you. You become both the river and the one drinking from it. The journey that began in forgetting ends in remembering. And in that remembering, you realize you never walked alone. The path we have walked together in this moment is not a straight road, but a spiral, circling back to the truth that has always been here. You were never meant to be small. You were never meant to live in the shadow of your own light. Everything you've heard today, the ancient whispers, the sacred patterns, the forgotten codes, they were not meant to stay in the pages of old scriptures or in the dust of broken temples. They were meant to live through you. Even now, as you breathe, you carry the same spark that kings, prophets, and healers guarded for centuries. The same current of life that rushed through the Nile when it overflowed, that stirred the stars into their constellations, that pulsed in the hands of the priests when they anointed a soul for awakening. But there's something you must remember. This spark is not eternal unless you tend to it. Neglect it, and it fades into the noise of the world. Feed it, and it becomes the fire that reshapes reality around you. Do not think awakening is an event. It is a practice, a weaving of your breath, your awareness, and your choices into something sacred. It is remembering who you are before the world told you what to be. So, guard the gates of your mind as if they were the doors of a temple. Let no thought enter that poisons your spirit. Walk as if the ground beneath you remembers your steps, for it does. Speak as if your words plant seeds in eternity, for they do. And above all, keep your inner flame alive. Not for the world's approval, not for the applause of others, but because the moment you let it go dark, the part of history you were meant to change will remain unchanged. If what you've felt here today has stirred even the smallest ember in you, keep walking with us. Subscribe to the Spine Gospel. And when you can, send a super thanks. Because the stories we share here are not entertainment, they are keys. And one day, you may find that the door they open is the one you've been standing before your whole life.